now my honor and privilege to introduce our speaker today, Reverend Ron Skowronski. Ron was ordained in 1981 at the age of 25 as the youngest spiritualist minister in America, and this was an NSAC ordination. He served the Plymouth Spiritualist Church in Rochester, New York from 1980 to 1990. He was on the NSAC board from 1981 to 1990. Ron is known as a thought-provoking speaker, a humorist, and a social activist. He is a passionate and devoted friend of spiritualism. Some refer to him as the voice of reason. Ron is currently an ordained minister with the United Church of Religious Science, the science of the mind. Ron has been a friend to our church for many, many years, and he has served here whenever we have asked him to. So please, folks, open your minds and open your hearts to the words and wisdom of the Reverend Ron Skowronski.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is always such a privilege to be with you. I couldn't help but when we were singing that last beautiful hymn, which is really an old Christian standby that's been reframed to reflect spiritualist sentiment and teachings, that I have this vision of people under the age of probably 40 leaving the church, taking out their cell phone and saying, "Hey Siri." "Yes? What are sheaves?" I know my grandkids would. You know, it has been mentioned, and I would be, I think, remiss if I didn't encourage us again. It has been mentioned that, you know, we're again on an uptick, if you will, for COVID-19. And I think I mentioned it the last time I was here that, you know, there's no question we, as a human family, worldwide, are weary, worn about dealing with this heinous and seems to be pervasive disease. And yet I go back to my hero, Winston Churchill, and I've shared this with you before, when he said, "If you're going through hell, keep going." And of course, one of my favorite axioms comes from some of my Jewish friends, and it is given to us in bad times as well as good times to help us gain perspective about the fact that we are spiritual beings who are having a human experience, and that the planet Earth is our divine classroom. And the axiom is very simple: this too shall pass. And that's the thing that I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit today, is about our sense of unity, our sense of togetherness that I believe is so vital and important. And I want to begin by talking about it within the context of the holiday season. Excuse me. Yeah, you'll have to bear with me. I'm not the enunciator I was the last time we spoke. I've lost a couple of teeth to make room for a dental implant. And so I've reached that age where, yes, you guessed it, my bark is worse than my bite. But I am healing. I should have put my name on the healing. Just sign it Toothless Ron. You know, this is obviously, and I'm not, of course, sharing with you anything you don't already know. This is the holiday season. And for us, at least I say for us, we, you know, within the context of, you know, North American and European culture, we seem to go, you know, almost down what I call a list or maybe a litany of holidays. And of course, the first one is Halloween, and I've mentioned it. Oh my God, if I had a nickel for every time I'd mention this in a spiritualist congregation, I'd be rich. But Halloween is the only day where I'm off. I don't have to work. I don't have to work a lick. Because everybody on this planet on Halloween believes in ghosts. I don't have to convince anybody about the validity of spirit return or the spirit side of life. I think it's the greatest holiday in the spiritualist community. I think its sponsor should be Casper, the friendly ghost. Then we have, of course, because it springs from my background, the Church of Rome gives us, coming right after Halloween, All Saints' Day, which is when people recognize those that have been designated as saints. And a saint is no different than any other human being, save the fact that they, through their own spiritual discipline and perhaps inherent gifts that they have been given from the spirit side of life, have indeed raised their level of consciousness to such a degree that they are truly, at least in this particular narrative, these particular points of view, that they are spiritual guides of the highest dimensions, and more often than not, many people who belong to what I call the Church of Rome, or the Roman Catholic Church, turn to the saints for guidance and direction, as we in the Spiritualist Church turn to our loved ones, our divine helpers, our guides, and our teachers. And of course, the next day after All Saints' Day is All Souls' Day, which this is a time, and you're going to be recognizing it in your own way. You said January 3rd? You're having a service to remember those who have passed on?
The animals, the first Sunday, and then
the animals who crossed the Rainbow Bridge, and then you had another one.
The third Sunday.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the third Sunday. And that is, in a sense, going to be your All Souls' Day. It is an opportunity for us to truly reflect about all of those. We use the word, and it's a misnomer, and you and I both know it's a misnomer. We have, quote, lost. What we have lost is our perception of their presence, of their soul, of their heart with us. And yet we are taught consistently and with great emphasis that we never walk alone. That our loved ones, our moms, our dads, our brothers, our sisters, our children, take your pick, whoever these individuals may be that you have indeed, I like to think in terms of lost track of perhaps, that they are with you, that they do provide you with support, that they do encourage you, and that the purpose of developing your own psychic sensitivity, or let us call it your own mediumistic intuition, is to be a more conscious individual, a more conscious being, so that when contact is established, because I think I mentioned this the last time I was with you, it is as difficult for them as it is for us to make that holy contact, to make that illumined communion, if you will. So it is that time that we go within us to strengthen our resolve, to strengthen our openness, to strengthen our willingness to accept and allow the blessed revelation that there is no death, there are no dead. Very shortly we'll be celebrating, and I mean we, and I have a reason for saying we, so just bear with me. We'll be celebrating Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights. And isn't it interesting that so many faith traditions, not only Judaism, but Christianity and so many, are born around the metaphor of light. Light is illuminating. It is guiding. It is better to light one candle than to curse the darkness, just to name an old quote. And in Judaism, Hanukkah is celebrated as the notion of a very small group of people who decided that who knew they were going through hell, but decided that with faith and confidence in their God, they would keep going. And this small group overcame tremendous odds, tremendous conflict, and even in the face, so to speak, of what appeared to be lack what appeared to be limitation, they, in their narrative, have come to believe that one cylinder of oil was enough to light the temple for 8 days, not just the one day. A lot of lessons can be gleaned from that story. A lot of true celebration and unification with our Judaic brothers and sisters. And here we come, this coming Thursday, gobble, 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 Thanksgiving. It's going to be a great day, except for Mr. Gobble, Gobble, Gobble. I like to think that maybe the Native American idea is a way of spiritualizing the holiday. I not only pray for the blessings of my family, my friends, and as we did so beautifully, peace and upliftment for the world, I also thank Mr. Turkey for giving their soul, if you will, so that we may sustain ourselves to continue to grow and progress and be a source of good in and throughout the world. People think that that might, now some, I must admit, some might think that's a little bit funny, but I take it very seriously because, again, what do I always say? Don't be asleep at the wheel. Be aware of all of life, not just your life, the interconnectedness of all of life. And there are many interconnectedness that we have ignored. And it is in the ignoring of that interconnectedness what happens. We develop things like the loss of hundreds of species of our four-legged and furry and feathered brothers and sisters. And we also develop climate change that isn't, as we all have come to acknowledge, is not now and shall not be, if we don't gain a handle on it, going to be fun in the future. So we do take this time to have Thanksgiving. Then, of course, we have Christmas. Now, Christmas is an interesting holiday. I've been around the better part of a half a century, truthfully, because I started my journey in spiritualism probably at the age of 13. By the time I was 15, I was already taking psychic unfoldment classes, and by the time I was 17, I've said this before, and I don't think they can take my membership card away at this point, but I lied about my age and became a member of the church at 17. You girls aren't 17, are you? Two girls. No, okay, good, all right. 21, but not 17. That's good. Well, at the time you had to be 18, and yet, during that time that I've been involved, one of the biggest conflicts that has occurred within the body of the spiritualist community, within the spiritualist faith tradition, is how much emphasis do we need to put upon the guru from Galilee? How much emphasis, and the question, and I used to see it, and maybe some of you were old enough where you remember it, it was even in the TNS magazine. Should spiritualists celebrate Christmas? My answer is yes. Because if you studied spiritualist literature, which goes back decades and decades and decades, almost as far back as the late 1800s to the present, those on the spirit side of life, and again I quote from, not quote, but refer to, for example, the teachings of White Eagle, the teachings of Silver Birch, and those are from Great Britain, by the way, those books. I think they were published originally through Psychic Press. But the idea was that spiritualism came forth not to worship Jesus as a god or a semi-deity, but was to understand that what he came to teach and proclaim made him a great example, not a great exception. And that what we reject in spiritualism, the physiological reanimation of a corpse, or what many, and I say this with respect, but I have to state what our conclusion is, and it's just done as a matter of theological information, is that we believe that the so-called resurrection was not physiological, but it was spiritual, and therefore in a sense, a materialization. And that is why those who were not necessarily particularly mediumistic, but indeed had eyes to see, were able to see Jesus after he was murdered on the Hill of Skulls and listen to what he had to say, and therefore again proved in a dramatic way, probably if not then one of the most dramatic ways in the course of human history, again, that there is no death, there are no dead. And of course, what's interesting to note is that many times, and I come from, any of you Polish? Good, that's good, I like that. It's important. We are the master race, you know. My mother would say that, but anyway. We celebrate something at Christmas time called Vigilia. And Vigilia is an opportunity for us to meet on Christmas Eve to express our devotion to each other, our love, our acceptance. We share at that meeting, that dinner, a ritualistic breaking of the bread called opłatek. And when we do that in order to, again, establish a sense of common union or commonality between us. And what we also do is put these flat wafers, it's just like technically like a communion wafer, but it's like a 3x5 postcard. We send these across the country and across the planet because we want that opportunity to symbolically and in also that literal sense to break bread, to be in communion with one another, to celebrate the birth of He who has taught us so much about not only the afterlife to come, but also established a template for leading a meaningful and abundant life here and now. And the one part of the Vigilia ceremony, or part of the dinner, is we put an empty chair at the table. And at the table, what that means now, some believe it's that chair is there to host, if you will, the spirit of the Christ child. But we in my family always had it for the unseen soul. It's like the tomb of the unknown soldier. We wanted to invite what we in spiritualism would probably call an earthbound soul. Someone who was lonely, someone who was sad, someone who had no sense of hope. And we wanted that soul to participate in that love fest, or that love feast, if you will. And in doing so, we felt that we were giving that person the love they needed to move on into the great dimension called the spirit side of life. And then there's my personal favorite holiday, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. You heard me right. Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. And, oh, by the way, I didn't mention, and I should have, please, I'm moving a little bit ahead of myself here. Then, of course, there's the beautiful holiday of Kwanzaa, which is right after Christmas. And that is an opportunity to establish not only African unity and cultural appreciation, but it's also an opportunity for those of us who are not in the African community to also appreciate that. And it's an enormously beautiful holiday. And it was created in order to develop, again, a sense of community, a sense of unity, a sense of what I will call significance. But back to Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. That was developed by Sir Richard Branson, and he's, as you probably know, a big business mogul in the world, has been for many, many years. He's currently trying to shoot people into space. And his attitude was, celebrate all the holidays. Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and there was a move at some point, to be honest, and I'm ignorant of this, so you'll have to please forgive me, but there's also a minor Islamic holiday in there. There was also a play on that, so So there were a number of years that I sent out, and they had them, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa cards. And of course now, with the new generations coming up, things change, and so now you no longer have Thanksgiving, you have Friendsgiving. You don't have Christmas, you have Blissmas. You have not festivals, but feastivals. And of course, there's my personal favorite, which is from Seinfeld, Festivus, the holiday for the rest of us. And I think that these are perhaps reactions to and a more humanistic approach to the holiday season, because sometimes people have been hurt by people of a religious ilk or nature and would prefer to have the festivity and the unity of the holiday season sans the religious baggage that sometimes can weigh very, very heavily on their heart and on their soul. But I want to say to you that ultimately, the reason I bring all of this to you is I had an experience. How did you like the preface to the sermon? It was the first preface. There's another hour and a half to go, so just sit back. Or as I like to say, buckle up, buttercup, the best is yet to come. But seriously, I've shared this with other congregations. Sometimes I'll walk into a place and, we have, there's no question, we are very much, it would be irresponsible and not absolutely logical to acknowledge this. We've become a very, very divided nation. I preach a lot about unity. I preach about commonality. I preach about uniting and oneness and all of that. And I do so because I am very concerned that we are fragmenting apart, not pulling ourselves together in the oneness that is our true reality, that is our true sense of being. Now, I believe we're going to eventually do that. I have no doubt in my mind in any way, shape, or form. But it's my responsibility as a clergyman and as a human being to do anything I can to encourage that rather than discourage it. And so it does happen to me from time to time. I mean, I can remember, years and years ago when I was maybe in my teens and my very early 20s, we didn't have this kind of knee-jerk reaction. It's like, where somebody says Merry Christmas to you in the store, and maybe you're not a Christian, maybe you don't keep Christmas, maybe you don't celebrate it, and so you say Happy Holidays to you and yours, and they jump down your throat with jack boots and want you to remember that this is America and it's a Christian country and we celebrate Christmas. Okay, anything you say. And may the peace of the Lord be with you too. And then I run like all get out. Well, I had the exact opposite happen to me relative to that, which was kind of interesting. I was standing in Walmart, where America shops, and there was a lady ahead of me, and she had 3/4 of a metric ton of stuff, and I'm there with 2 items. So she's looking at me, and now grant you, she did offer. She said, "Would you like to go ahead of me?" No, it's quite all right. I have all the time in the world, because I know that one of my spiritual lessons is patience, and so I decided to take that lesson at that moment. But anyway, she got through her stuff, and as she was basically, getting ready to make her payment, she says, "Well, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas," and she stopped herself. She goes, "I'm sorry." I go, "Why are you sorry?" "Well, I was going to wish you a Merry Christmas, but it occurred to me I don't know you, and you might resent that." And of course, it's what I call a Ron Skowronski teaching moment. So I said, "My dear lady, let me tell you something. I am spiritually fluid. My life and my religious upbringing have taught me that there is nothing new under the sun, and that all religions fundamentally teach the same good news, that you are to love yourself and love your neighbor as yourself. And that whatever you can do to facilitate that is good and only good. So, you must understand, I celebrate all the holidays. I look to celebrate all the holidays. Now, there is a pragmatic aspect of this. In my working life, I get more days off. And I also get more presents. One must be practical, don't you know? But I said, in a spiritual sense, I said, I'm a big fan of Jesus. I'm a big fan of Abraham and the Torah. I'm a big fan of Muhammad. I'm a big fan of the good Lord Buddha. I said, what we have to realize is that we are all wrong in trying to make these speciality clubs or pockets of special, unique, and different. That the message is fundamentally the same. And when I said that to her, I have to be honest with you, you've seen How the Grinch Stole Christmas, that wonderful cartoon, and you see where that one scene where he finally gets it, he finally gets the meaning of Christmas, that Christmas doesn't come in a box or a bag, it doesn't come from a store, and that we all need to, heart to heart and hand to hand, experience that unity. That's the true spirit of Christmas. And I saw that. It was like her little Grinchy heart grew 10 times that day. And as we were walking out, she said, "You're different." Yes, ma'am. It's the code of the West. I'm different. But one of the things I try to teach, especially those people who are not religious, is that there are things that we need to focus on. And a couple of the things that I focus on very strongly during this season, of course, is the spiritual teachings, the spiritual illumination, the spiritual revelation of something like A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And one of the most profound spiritual illuminations and revelations comes from the movie with, of course, Jimmy Stewart, It's a Wonderful Life. And there's two things that come to mind: the lessons, the spirituality, the upliftment, the communion, common union, the communion with people that comes out of these experiences that they're having, and the lessons learned. But the big lesson that sometimes people ignore, and I want to bring that to us because it's important to those in the spiritualist community, is that, again, these lessons in A Christmas Carol and in A Wonderful Life comes from those who the world called dead. Those who the world called dead. And so, it's important to note that there is, in spite of us, Spirit, infinite Holy Spirit, guiding us, pushing us forward, and saying, we're here, you are not alone, we are unified, and hopefully encouraging and uplifting us to do what we've been striving to do for millennia, and that is gain a true sense of connection, not only within ourselves, but with each other, a true sense of significance. You are significant. You are wonderful. It says in Scripture, you are wonderfully made. Wonderfully made. And when we strive to take those lessons and remember them as we go through the various so-called holidays, or what they really are, holy days, and remind ourselves of the more important, the more significant lessons, and strive to go out and live them and work with them, we not only will be, again, as I often say, be preparing us for the greater life that is to come to each and every one of us, but also leading more meaningful and more wonderful lives in the here and now, making this what I believe infinite intelligence, or God, if you will, has always meant it to be: peace on earth, total peace on earth, which is truly, if you will, God's will for all life kind. And I say this in the spirit of the entire holy day or holiday season, and I wish you all the true happiness of all the holidays in the oneness of our spiritual life. Thank you, and God bless you.